Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you felt afraid? Not the kind of fear that startles you in a movie theater, not the kind that kicks in when you hear a strange noise at night. I mean real fear. The kind of fear that wraps around your gut and whispers, "You're not good enough. You might fail. What will they think?" If we're honest, we all know that feeling, and here's the truth we often forget, that feeling is normal, biological. It's part of the oldest system in your body. It's the reason your ancestors survived long enough to pass their genes to you. Fear kept them alive in jungles, in caves, on battlefields, and during famines. You are here because someone before you listened to fear and ran. But we don't live in jungles anymore. Most of us aren't being hunted by predators. And yet that same ancient warning system is still firing off at modern moments. When we're about to speak up in a meeting, when we're about to start a new job, when we tell someone we love them, when we dare to take a risk. Fear has not evolved, but we have the chance to. See, there's a fundamental misunderstanding about courage. Most people think brave people don't feel fear. That somehow the confident, the successful, the inspiring people we admire have mastered some secret that makes them immune. But that's a myth. The truth is far more empowering. Brave people feel the same fear you do. They've just made a choice. They've decided not to let fear drive. They've chosen to act not because they're fearless, but because they're intentional. Think about it. Every person who ever changed something, every pioneer, every revolutionary, every voice that rose above the crowd was afraid at some point. Fear is the sign that what you're doing matters. It's the sign that you're standing on the edge of something significant. It's what you do next that defines who you are. And that's where the power lies. Not in eliminating fear, but in learning how to respond to it with intent. Let's take a step back and ask ourselves, what is fear actually doing? Biologically, it's trying to protect us. It says this might go wrong, this might hurt, this might fail. And fear is right, all of those things might happen. But here's the question we don't ask nearly enough. What if they don't? What if the risk works? What if the presentation is the one that gets you promoted? What if the idea you're afraid to pitch is the breakthrough your team needs? What if the thing you're scared to say becomes the conversation that changes your relationship? You see, fear focuses us on danger. Intention focuses us on potential. The difference isn't the presence of fear. It's the choice to act based on your values, not your anxiety. There's a powerful mindset shift that happens when we start to live this way. When we stop asking, what if I fail, and start asking, what's worth doing even if I do? When you act as if you fear nothing, you're not claiming to be fearless. You're simply deciding that something, your mission, your growth, your people, matters more. This is how leaders are made. Not in the absence of doubt, but in the presence of purpose. And it's important to say, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to try again after failure. Sometimes it's showing up when it would be easier to hide. Sometimes it's asking for help. Fear says, don't be seen. Courage says, stand anyway. Now, I want to be clear. Acting as if you fear nothing is not about arrogance. It's not about pretending to be invincible. It's about being grounded. It's about knowing that fear is real, but it doesn't get to make your decisions. It doesn't get to define you. You do. It's also not about being reckless. Recklessness ignores fear. Courage acknowledges it and then weighs it against something greater. I once spoke with a firefighter who told me something I've never forgotten. He said, the first time I ran into a burning building, I was terrified. But I did it because I knew someone was inside. My fear didn't disappear. It just got quiet next to my purpose. That's what intention does. It quiets fear by amplifying meaning. It doesn't make the danger less real. It just reminds you that something else matters more. This is something we can practice. It's not a one-time event. It's a daily decision. You wake up and maybe you're scared to take that step, but you take it anyway. And then tomorrow you do it again, and the day after that, again. You don't wait for the fear to go away. You just refuse to let it be in charge. Over time, this practice compounds. The more you act with intention, the more your fear starts to respect your resolve. You realize that fear is just a passenger, and you're the one behind the wheel. So the next time fear shows up, and it will, don't fight it. Don't try to silence it. Acknowledge it. Thank it even. It's just doing its job. And then look it in the eye and say, I hear you, but you're not driving today. And then you walk forward. Not because you're fearless, but because you're ready. Acting as if you fear nothing isn't about pretending. It's about deciding. It's about reclaiming your power from a voice that was never meant to hold it. And it's about reminding yourself and others that courage doesn't start in the absence of fear. It starts in the presence of something greater. Fear is biological. Courage is intentional. And your life, your impact, will be shaped by the one you choose to follow. People are always watching, not in a creepy big brother kind of way, but in a very human way. Whether we realize it or not, every single day, with every single action, we are teaching others how to treat us, how to understand us, and how to see us. Our behavior is like a silent language, and it speaks louder than any words we say. And that's why it's so important to recognize that how we act, especially in moments of pressure or uncertainty, becomes a signal, a message, a story that others start to believe about who we are and what we stand for. The fascinating part is this applies whether we want it to or not. We don't get to opt out of it. Even silence teaches people something. If you stay quiet when something's wrong, people learn that your voice can't be counted on. If you constantly defer to others, even when you have an idea, people learn that maybe you don't believe in your own value. If you show up confidently, even while trembling inside, people learn to trust your courage. And here's the truth that stings a little. People will treat you based on what you tolerate and what you project. If you act like your ideas aren't worth listening to, people will follow your lead. If you act like you're the leader in the room, not with arrogance, but with conviction, people will start to lean in and listen differently. You are every day writing the story of how the world should perceive you. That's not about ego, it's about responsibility. A lot of people don't realize just how powerful they are in this way. They wait for others to recognize their potential. They hope someone else will see their value. But what if it doesn't start there? What if it starts with how you carry yourself? What if your posture, your tone, your presence, even when you're nervous, is what gives others permission to see the leader in you? Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I met a young man who worked at a small nonprofit. He wasn't a director, not even a manager. He was in one of the most junior roles on the team. But every time I spoke to him, I noticed something interesting. He didn't just answer questions, he listened first. He asked thoughtful questions back. He took notes. He didn't dominate the room, but he made every person in it feel seen. And over time, people started turning to him for advice, for guidance, for leadership. No title, no official authority, just presence, just intention. One day I asked him, "Do you realize what people see when they look at you?" He smiled and said, "I try to act like the person I want to become." That stuck with me. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't faking confidence or trying to be someone he wasn't. He was simply aware that his behavior was shaping perception. And he used that awareness with purpose. Now, this is not about manipulating how others see you. That's not the point. The goal isn't to impress people or convince them of anything false. The point is to align who you are with how you show up, to bring your internal values out into the world through your external action. Because people don't follow titles, they follow examples. So when you act with courage, even if your voice shakes, you teach others that bravery is possible. When you admit a mistake instead of hiding it, you teach others that honesty is safe. When you lead with empathy instead of ego, you teach others that kindness is powerful. Your actions become a mirror in which other people begin to see not only you, but what's possible in themselves. And here's where it gets really powerful. People mirror behavior. They reflect back what they observe. So if you want people to trust you, show them what trust looks like. If you want people to collaborate, demonstrate what it means to lift others up. If you want people to listen, give them the gift of being heard. That kind of leadership doesn't require a stage. It doesn't need a spotlight. It happens in the in-between moments. How you treat the receptionist, how you show up when no one's clapping, how you talk about people when they're not in the room. It's easy to think leadership is something you arrive at, a role, a title, a position. But the truth is, it's a decision, one you make over and over. And every time you make it, every time you act as if you fear nothing, every time you step up, even when it's uncomfortable, you give people a new lens through which to see you, and they adjust their behavior accordingly. People respond to what you project. If you project clarity, they will treat you as clear. If you project strength, they will trust your steadiness. If you project humility, they will see your confidence as grounded. This isn't just about personal growth. It's about influence, because here's the deeper truth. The way you behave doesn't just shape how others see you, it shapes how they see themselves. When you act with purpose and conviction, you don't just teach people how to view you, you teach them what's possible for them. That's the power of example. That's why this matters. So the next time you step into a room, whether it's a boardroom, a classroom, a family dinner, or a first date, remember that you are already teaching people something. Every word, every pause, every gesture is either reinforcing the story you want to live or pulling you further from it. And the good news is, you get to decide what story that is. You get to choose how you show up. You get to choose what values you embody. You get to choose whether your actions reflect your fears or your vision. And over time, those choices become your reputation, your brand, your legacy. So act like the kind of person you want others to believe in, because the moment you do, they just might start believing in you. When we see someone walk into a room with confidence, shoulders back, head up, speaking clearly, listening intently, we assume that they were born that way. That confidence is something some people just have, like a gift wrapped neatly and handed over at birth. But that belief is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid doing the hard work. Confidence isn't a trait. It's not in your it's a skill, a craft. And like any skill, it's built slowly, repeatedly, and often quietly when no one's watching. The problem is we romanticize confidence. We idolize it. We think it's the loud voice in the meeting, the perfect pitch, the polished speaker. But real confidence, the kind that's sustainable and authentic, it's not loud at all. It's quiet. It's built in the shadows of daily choices, in the moments when no one claps, in the conversations with yourself when you want to give up. And instead, you decide to try again. Think about the first time you did something that scared you. Maybe it was public speaking. Maybe it was asking for a promotion. Maybe it was saying, I don't know, in a room full of people who seem to know everything. You probably didn't feel confident going into it, but you did it anyway. And then something subtle changed, a shift, a sense that maybe, just maybe, you could do it again. That's how confidence begins, not with a big bang, but with a whisper. With one small act of courage, repeated often enough that your brain starts to recognize a new pattern. I can do hard things. Confidence grows when we consistently prove to ourselves that we can be trusted to show up, that we won't abandon ourselves in discomfort, that we will stand, speak, try, and even fail, and still keep going. Let me tell you about a young woman I met after a leadership workshop. She came up to me afterward and said, I want to lead, but I'm not confident enough yet. I'm working on it. I asked her how she was working on it. She paused and said, I'm reading books, watching videos, learning from people like you. That's all good, I told her, but that's not how confidence grows. That's how knowledge grows. Confidence doesn't come from information. It comes from action. She looked surprised, but it's true. You can't think your way into confidence. You have to live your way into it. You have to do things before you feel ready. You have to take the meeting, raise your hand, start the project, post the idea. Not because you feel confident, but because you're trying to become the kind of person who will... Confidence is not the absence of self-doubt. It's the decision that your purpose is more important than your fear. And here's something else we get wrong. We think we have to feel confident before we act. But that's backward. Action precedes belief, not the other way around. You don't act because you believe you can. You act so you can start believing you can. Each time you take a step, however small, you're not just doing something, you're becoming someone. And the more you do it, the stronger that identity becomes. That's why small, repeated acts matter more than big, rare ones. We live in a culture obsessed with the grand gesture, the viral video, the meteoric rise, the once-in-a-lifetime pitch. But real confidence isn't built on the highlight reel. It's built on the reps you put in when no one's watching. It's saying good morning to the person in the elevator when you'd rather stare at your phone. It's emailing your idea to your manager even if they might not respond. It's choosing to speak when it would be easier to stay silent. These moments are like drops in a bucket, each one small, almost insignificant. But eventually the bucket fills. And then one day you look around and realize you're not pretending anymore. You've become the person you hope to be. Not because of one giant leap, but because of 1,000 small steps. I think about athletes a lot when I talk about confidence, not because they're superhuman, but because they train in the open. We see their effort. We see the drills, the sweat, the repetition. We expect it from them. But in the rest of life, in business, in relationships, in leadership, we pretend that mastery should be immediate, that confidence should be instant, that if you're meant for it, it should come easy. That's not how it works. Confidence is earned in practice, in the gym of discomfort, and it's strengthened every time you do the thing you didn't think you could do. But here's the most powerful part. Confidence doesn't just serve you, it serves others. When you walk into a room with quiet assurance, people feel safer. When you speak with belief, others begin to believe too. When you take a risk, you give permission to someone else to take theirs. Your confidence becomes a beacon. And the more consistent your actions, the brighter that beacon shines. People start to trust your voice, not because it's loud, but because it's steady. Not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. And make no mistake, there will be setbacks. You will try and fail. You will put yourself out there and not get the response you hope for. But that doesn't erase your progress. Failure isn't the opposite of confidence. It's part of how it grows. It teaches you that you can survive disappointment, that you can recover, that you are not fragile. Every time you fail and come back, you teach yourself that resilience is part of your story. So if you're waiting to feel confident before you act, stop, flip the script. Take one small step today. Raise your hand, say the thing, take the shot, then do it again tomorrow, and the day after that. You don't have to be fearless, you don't have to be flawless, you just have to be consistent. Because confidence isn't built in a day, it's built daily. There's something powerful about the way we carry ourselves, the way we sit, the way we speak, the way we walk into a room. Most people assume those are outward reflections of who we already are, how confident we feel, how in control we are, how strong we are on the inside. But what if it also worked the other way around? What if the way we act on the outside could actually shape who we become on the inside? We often think strength is something we're supposed to feel first, that once we feel confident, we'll act confident. Once we feel secure, we'll take the risk. Once we feel strong, we'll show up strong. But it rarely works like that, because more often than not, action precedes emotion. Behavior creates belief. And showing up as if you are strong, even when you feel anything but, is how strength is built. It's one of the great truths about human behavior. We grow into the roles we play repeatedly. I once spoke with a military officer who said something that has stayed with me for years. He said, the first time I led my team into a dangerous situation, I didn't feel brave, I felt terrified. But I stood up straight, I spoke clearly, and I made decisions. Not because I was fearless, but because I knew they needed someone to be strong. And the longer I acted strong, the stronger I actually became. That's how it works. Acting strong doesn't mean faking it. It doesn't mean pretending you're invincible. It doesn't mean pushing away emotion or putting on a mask. It means choosing the behavior that reflects who you want to be, not just how you feel in the moment. Because feelings are fleeting, circumstances change, but actions can be anchored in intention. Think about the most inspiring people you've ever met. Were they loud? Maybe. Were they charismatic? Possibly. But the ones who really left a mark, the ones who carried true strength, were steady. They didn't panic when things got tough. They didn't let fear write the script. They acted with clarity and courage, even when the ground beneath them was shaking. And here's what's incredible about that. None of them were born that way. They built that strength over time, not by waiting to feel it, but by choosing to act as if they had it over and over again. Acting strong means standing your ground when you'd rather run. It means showing up to the meeting, the interview, the conversation, even when your stomach is in knots. It means speaking your truth with a voice that trembles and refusing to shrink just because the room feels big. Because strength isn't found in the absence of fear or doubt. It's forged in the decision to move forward anyway. The human brain is amazing. It's always paying attention to what you do. And when you act strong, when you step into discomfort, when you keep going, when it's easier to quit, your brain takes note. It starts to build a new internal story. Maybe I can handle this. Maybe I'm stronger than I thought. Over time, those stories turn into beliefs. And those beliefs become identity. You don't become strong by talking about it. You become strong by doing strong things. And that's where so many people get stuck. They wait. They wait until they feel ready, until they feel brave, until the nerves are gone. But courage is not the absence of nerves. It's choosing to show up in spite of them. You become who you want to be by living it step by step, choice by choice, day by day. I know a woman who's terrified of public speaking. The very idea made her physically ill. But she was passionate about her work, and she knew that sharing her voice mattered more than her fear. So she made a deal with herself. She would accept every speaking opportunity that came her way for an entire year, no matter how small. Even when she shook, even when she stumbled, she stood up and did it anyway. By the end of that year, she wasn't just a better speaker. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not because the fear magically disappeared, but because she had trained herself to stand strong in its presence. Every time she acted strong, her strength grew. Not all at once, but gradually, like lifting heavier weights at the gym. Strength, real strength, is built in repetition. It's the same in leadership. People don't follow titles, they follow strength. But not brute strength, not domination. They follow the kind of strength that stays calm under pressure. The kind that listens, the kind that makes people feel safe because it doesn't collapse when things go wrong. And how do you become that kind of leader? You don't wait for the world to validate you. You show up with strength before you feel ready. You speak with conviction. You hold your values. You take responsibility. And with every action, you reinforce the truth that you can be relied on, not just by others, but by yourself. This is why the phrase, act as if you fear nothing, is so powerful. Not because we want to live in denial of fear, but because acting with strength teaches us that we can move forward even when fear is present. Your posture matters. Your tone matters. Your presence matters. When you walk into a room with strength, not force, not ego, but grounded strength, you shift the energy. You send a signal. You remind others and yourself that no matter what's happening, you can handle it. You can be trusted. You're ready. It's not about pretending. It's about choosing. You choose to carry yourself with strength. You choose to stand up straight when life tries to push you down. You choose to speak even when your voice shakes. You choose to keep going even when your legs are tired. And each time you do, you build resilience. You build endurance. You build self-trust. And that's what real strength is made of. Not muscles, not medals, not external success, but the inner knowing that you've shown up for yourself again and again, no matter the circumstances. So if you want to become stronger, stop waiting for the feeling. Start taking the actions. Carry yourself with the energy of the person you're becoming. Lead as if people already believe in you. Speak as if your words matter. Move as if your next step is exactly where you belong. Because it is. Acting strong doesn't just help you survive the moment, it shapes who you become on the other side of it. And with enough repetition, it doesn't just look like strength, it is strength. Fear is a quiet liar. It doesn't shout, it whispers, it speaks to us in subtle private ways, planting doubt, urging hesitation, asking questions that sound like protection but are really just disguised paralysis. What if you fail? What if you're not good enough? What if everyone sees you fall? It rarely announces itself outright. That would be too easy to confront. Instead, fear thrives in silence. It survives best when it convinces us not to speak, not to act, not to risk. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Because when we keep our fears to ourselves, when we let them sit in the dark, they grow, not because they're true, but because we give them room. The more silent we stay, the louder fear becomes. Not out loud, but in our heads, in our hearts, in our hesitation. The people we admire most, the ones who inspire us, who seem courageous and composed, they feel fear too. They're not fearless. They're just fluent in courage. They've learned to move toward action, not away from it. They've built the habit of choosing motion over stagnation, even when their knees shake. Because courage doesn't grow in thinking, it grows in doing. Let me tell you about someone I met who taught me this better than any book or lecture ever could. She was a mid-level manager at a company going through massive change, new leadership, layoffs, uncertainty everywhere. Most people kept their heads down, played it safe, did only what they were told, but she did something different. She started asking questions, hard questions. She raised ideas in meetings when everyone else went quiet. She organized check-ins with her team just to keep morale up, even though no one told her to. And she told me something I'll never forget. She said, "I was scared the whole time, but staying silent felt worse than failing." That's it. That's courage, not the absence of fear, but the decision to speak, to move, to do something, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed, especially when it is. Because the opposite of fear is not fearlessness, it's forward motion. Every time we act in spite of fear, we chip away at its power. We send a signal to ourselves that we are not powerless, that we are not stuck, that we are capable of movement even in the presence of uncertainty. And the more we move, the more we shift the story fear tries to tell us. That story, by the way, always sounds the same. Don't say too much. Don't risk rejection. Don't draw attention to yourself. Don't try, because trying might mean failing. But here's the truth. Fear shrinks when it's shared. When we say out loud, "I'm nervous," it loses its edge. When we raise our hand and say, "I don't know, but I want to try," it loses control. When we act, even with trembling hands, fear has no choice but to take a step back. Courage isn't loud. It doesn't have to be bold or theatrical. Sometimes it's a quiet decision, a gentle nudge toward what matters, a single sentence, a single choice. And yet those moments are the ones that define who we are. You don't have to leap across canyons to be brave. You just have to take one step forward when everything inside you is telling you to sit still. And here's the beauty. Courage is contagious. When one person acts, others feel permission to follow. Think about it. You've seen it in a meeting where someone finally says what everyone is thinking. Or in a classroom when one person raises their hand and suddenly others do too. One act of courage opens the door for more. That's why action is so powerful. It doesn't just change how we feel, it changes how others feel around us. It raises the standard. It sets the tone. It rewrites what's possible. And over time, those actions become habits. We start defaulting to courage, not because we've eliminated fear, but because we've learned we don't need to obey it. Fear will always have something to say. It's part of the human condition. But we don't have to treat it as truth. We don't have to let it drive the car. We can hear it, acknowledge it, and keep going anyway. And the more we act, the more we discover something truly powerful, that fear isn't proof that we're weak. It's evidence that we're doing something meaningful. The presence of fear often means we're on the edge of something important, that we care, that we're stretching, that we're stepping into territory where growth is possible. So don't wait for fear to go away. It won't. Wait for that, and you'll be waiting a lifetime. Instead, act, say the thing, send the email, make the call, launch the project. Step forward. The silence that fear loves cannot survive in the presence of movement, because action is louder than doubt. And every time we choose action, we're not just changing the situation, we're changing ourselves, we're building identity, we're becoming the kind of person who does the hard things, the honest things, the brave things. And the world starts to reflect that back to us. You want people to trust you? Show them courage. You want people to follow you? Show them movement. You want people to believe in you? Show them that fear doesn't own you. Not with speeches, with choices, with actions, with steps. Fear thrives in silence, but courage grows with every forward motion. It doesn't need to be big, it just needs to be consistent. And over time, you won't just act like someone who is courageous, you will be someone who is courageous. Because that's who you chose to become, one act at a time.